We live? We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? Is this exciting? How exciting is this? We are, welcome to Crossing the Streams. We have Bob back, so that's exciting. And just comment below how long you think Bob will be here. The winner gets a Bob and Sal mug. And so it's exciting. We have the full crew here today. We actually don't have a guest. We rescheduled, but then we're like, we got the whole crew. So welcome to Crossing the Streams. This is the #1 show in the world, currently ranked Newsweek magazine, 15th week in a row, #1 in the world, 17,000 countries, 107 states, #1. Only in one of those states, and that's Texas, are we in the top 5. Okay. So anyway, so we're here. We're going to talk about great shows and everything that you should be streaming and all that kind of good stuff. And in some cases, not streaming. But we're going to kick off with the theme song. Ladies and gentlemen, I give it to Ron.
How about this? All right, here we go, guys. Here's the story of some lonely fellows who spend way too much time watching the TV. All of them have jobs and friends. Well, not really. Just between you and me.
Howard.
They made a live show out of their hobby. Every TV watcher's TV watching dream. Jeff and Ron and Sal and Bob, and there's me. They called it Crossing Streams.
And then one day they went live on all the platforms. You could hear the people laugh and shout and scream. Still can't find another word that rhymes with platform. But man, we cross the streams.
We cross
We
the
cross
streams.
the
We cross the streams.
We cross the
Excellent. That was profound.
That was really good, actually. Hey, look at Jerry's here. Oh, thank you, Jerry. And we hope Jerry is feeling better today.
Hello, Jerry.
Welcome, guys.
And then Donna Newman.
Hi, Donna.
Hello, Donna.
Hello, Donna.
That's hello, made form. I don't even know that.
I think that was meant for somebody else.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut.
Yeah, we got the reviews are already coming in. Grammy Award winning. Hey, Lee. Superfan Lee is here. Superfan Jerry is here.
Oh, Lee.
We've got so many people here. It's so good. It's so good. So I wanted to say from last week, we talked about the Kaminsky method, and I finished it. And I got to say, as a 3-season thing, I'll put it in the top any series that can completely wrap it up. To pull back from where they had to pull back when Arkin decided he had to leave. Well, I still stand by it. I found the funeral a little cringeworthy at the beginning of the season. After that, when it got into its thing, I couldn't watch it enough. Kathleen Turner was amazing. I'm not going to say I cried, but I might have at least twice. And just tears. And but my wife was cutting an onion at the same time, so it could have been that. Sure. And but I think I'm glad you pushed me to watch it. But overall, I thought it was so good. So
I thought they wrapped the series up brilliantly. It was just, you're hit by the pandemic, you're hit by the loss of a character, but they did what a lot of series don't do. They committed to finishing it and closing it out. And not only did they close it out, but they closed it out really well. Great redemption for a character, and I thought it was great.
Why did Alan Arkin just have to leave? Why did he?
He essentially retired from acting. He wrote a book. It was the pandemic. He didn't know when it was going to end. And he just said, you know what? I don't need it. I'm good. So, maybe he'll come back and do a role here or there. But he basically just shut it down. It wasn't just a series. It was just acting in general. They didn't think they were going to do another series because of the
pandemic.
The pandemic, right?
All right. Well, anyway, again, thanks for the recap last week, Howard, and I definitely think it was pretty awesome. Hey, just so everyone, let's just kind of reset. Ron, tell everyone who you are. Let's go around the circle real quick. We never introduce ourselves. Yeah.
Well, hey guys, Ron Lippett. So I qualified for the show because there was a time pre-COVID that I traveled on airplanes every single week, and I would watch everything that Delta Airlines had to go. So Jeff and I would talk about it. That's how I got in this show. So glad to be here, and thanks, Jeff.
And you're a funny guy.
Bob has no recollection of the lean into the mic conversation. Howard.
I'm Howard Rossner. I'm Jeff and I've been friends nigh on 30 plus years, and so that's how I qualify. Yeah, aught for
Howard and I
way before the aughts.
Yeah, Salem Bob of the Salem Bob Show.
Sal D'Amelio.
Bob Phillips. We make up the Sal and Bob Show. We're a couple of comedians from Detroit. You can hear us on XM Sirius and various channels on that. We each have CDs out. We play clubs and theaters all over the country.
Zach.
Awesome.
I am one half of the creative team that is Some Nobodies. We make about 20 different shows, mostly fictional, weird sci-fi stuff. And I qualify to be on the show because I literally watch everything ever and I complain about everything.
And I am Jeff Dwoskin. I am the host of Live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. It's a fun pop culture podcast, #1 in 50 countries, the #1 downloaded show in the world. And I just made that up. And Zach actually has a new podcast that he just did. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, which is kind of cool. So check that out.
What's it called?
Check it out.
What's it called, Zach?
Create your own pod venture.
Nice.
Okay.
Very, very nice. What do we got here? I hardly recognize Bob without the clicks. It's a thing.
Hey, Jerry, I will meet you in the party room after this.
The green room.
Hey, Fred. What's up? All right. Well, if you caught us last week, then you were all caught up on. Oh, look at that! I forgot to take Fred's thing off. If you were last week, we talked about Lucifer, my dinner with Hervé, Nightcrawler, the Kaminsky Method, which we were just catching up on, and Hacks. And so that was fun. Hacks, by the way, I released another episode, and I'm still thoroughly enjoying that show. It keeps getting better and better. And then today, we're going to talk about The Kings, Ozark, Halston, and 1971, the year that changed everything. But first, what you all have come to love. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Netflix Metrix.
Yay! All right, so if you, for some reason, don't know what I'm doing, I decided to watch whatever Netflix says is the top 10 things that people watch yesterday out of the 75 million people that have Netflix and watch it constantly, similar to me. And here is what I had to watch today. Came out today, actually, number 10 is Bo Burnham's Inside, which is his new stand-up comedy act. You have to be a fan of Bo Burnham to like this specific one. I happen to like Bo Burnham, so I thought it was really well done. Bo Burnham has this really cool creative style of stand-up comedy that is also music and also very depressing and pretty sad. But this one is his newest comedy special just came out. It's him alone. There's no audience. He directed himself. He wrote it. Like I said, he is a creative dude. He's very depressed, but he has this really interesting way of telling really cool stories and songs and everything else. So if you like Bo Burnham, check it out because it is probably one of his best works. If you don't like Bo Burnham, I wouldn't start here because you would not understand what's happening. Number 9, Monsters vs. Aliens. This came out in 2009. It's that movie, animated movie from DreamWorks. It was written by Maya Forbes. Directed by Rob Letterman and Conrad Vernon. It stars Reese Witherspoon, Rainn Wilson, Stephen Colbert, among many other voice actors, including Paul Rudd and many others. So it is exactly what the title is. It's about these aliens that come to Earth, and the government has this secret force of monsters that they are going to send out to kill these guys. I remember going to the theater and seeing it in 2009 and liking it a lot. Now, apparently 2021 Zach Wiseman finds it to be kind of annoying with a lot of screaming, but it is still pretty fun and clever. For DreamWorks, it's a very, very good movie. So if you have kids, check it out. If you don't, whatever. I don't really care. Number 8 is Extreme. Not about that one. I don't. Extreme. This is a new movie that came out about 3 days ago. This is about 2 years after the murder of his son and father. A retired hitman sets in motion a careful crafted revenge plan against the killer, his own brother. Directed by Daniel Ben-Mayer. It is a Spanish film that for some reason I watched the dub version, which took me out of the movie completely because it is one of the worst dubbed versions of anything I've ever seen. And that became such a thing. I'm like, I can't believe that they let this happen. But it stars Teo Garcia and Oscar Janeda. It is written by Teo Garcia, and she is awesome. She is, it's like a John Wick style movie. Very 90s in its action and its plot lines, but it is just a fine movie that most likely does not exist. So if you're looking for some sort of weird action, yeah, check it out. It's fine. Fine. Number 7. Doggone Trouble. This is a really bad animated movie. It popped up about 11 days ago. It's about a paper dog named Trouble, and he must learn to live in the real world while trying to escape from his former owner's greedy children. Directed by Kevin Johnson, who is nobody. Stars Big Sean, Pamela Adlon, Lucy Hale, also Joel McHale, Wilmer Valderrama, and Damon Wayans. And with that kind of list, you probably can assume it's not going to be very good. It is just a generic movie, very copy and paste on a lot of our things. It's just about this dog who's not a good dog, and he lives a dog life. I don't know, whatever. Number 6. This thing is similar to a Star Wars gun because pew, pew, pew. It is really bad. I talked about it before, called Home. Do not watch it. Skip that movie. It is terrible. Number 5, Coco Melon. I think I'm starting to like this show. I don't understand what it is, but I'm getting into it. Number 4, Dirty John. This is a very interesting show. This is an anthology in each based on a true crime story featuring epic tale of love gone wrong, created by Alexandra Cunningham. Stars Connie Britton, Christian Slater, Eric Bana, and Amanda Peet. Now, season 1, I watched it. It's a good season. Good. Right? Just good. Season 2, though, just came out the other day, and it is great. It is so much better than season 1. I definitely suggest it. The costumes, the aesthetics of the era are so good. The story takes you from the 60s all the way to the 90s, and you feel like you're actually in those decades. I love exactly where the money goes. They did a very, very good job. The characters have really intricate layers to them. The acting is very... I'm a fan. I didn't really like Amanda Peet so much. Love Amanda Peet now. But the whole thing is pretty much about Dan Broderick. And so season 1 kind of gives you a glimpse of like sociopath with a guy named John Meehan. Season 2 goes into Dan Broderick, and they do a really interesting behavior of mental illnesses, such as, love bombing, validation, entitlement, vindictiveness, exploitative gaslighting, a lot of different ways that people are just emotionally manipulated, and very, very well done.
I got 2 things. One is we got hello from Korea. Hello. We're reaching a Korea.
Golden Owl.
Yeah, so real quick, when we talk about being on, it's actually our good friend and fraternity brother, Eric Waldman, just sent me a note. Yeah.
Was that Eric?
He's got it on in his classroom in South Korea, and wanted me to make sure that I mention that Noah, in South Korea, you have food all over your face.
Noah, you goofball.
Come on, Noah, you're better than that.
Oh, hey, that's so funny. Hey, Eric, what's up, man? So I got hooked on the Zach. I got hooked on the the thing that runs for 2 minutes if you leave it on the show in the beginning. And so I think we put this on our list to watch. It's a true story.
Yep.
So it seemed pretty interesting. I didn't recognize Amanda Peet to save my life, but yeah. All right.
Some of us actually lived from the 60s through the 90s, just so you know.
Yes, some of you definitely did. But yeah, it's really good. And if you did like season 1 or didn't watch it, I would suggest it. Season 2 is great and beautiful. Yeah, go get it. Number 3, we have another movie called Two Hearts. I absolutely just detest this movie. This is one of those like Hallmark kind of ridiculous, stupid movies. Stars Radha Mitchell. It's like one of those 2 parallel storylines where you're like, there's obviously no way these stories can connect, and yet they do connect. It's based on a book from 2017 called All My Tomorrows by Brian Gregory. The director, whose name is Lance Houle, and co-writers Veronica Houle, they serve up a touching and inspirational story of how the lives of families can intersect and how triumph can come from tragedy. Boring. Please pass on. Number 2, Lucifer. I saw you guys talk about this last week. I do not like this show, but I'm not going to talk about it. Number 1, the thing that I am so happy with, and I actually watched twice already, and I please suggest people watch this. Came out 4 days ago, called Sweet Tooth. Now, it is created by Jim Beckel and Beth Schwartz. It is produced by the Downey. So Robert Downey Jr. and his wife are producing this thing. It actually got picked up in 2018 by Hulu, and they weren't happy with the amount of money that they wanted to put behind this project, because if you don't know about this, it's about a boy who's half human and half deer, and he survives a post-apocalyptic world with other hybrids. Now, the way this show works, no spoilers, but there's a pandemic that hits the world, and at the exact same time that the pandemic starts killing people off, about 9 months later, all the are born now are half animals. Some are half birds, some are half whatever. There's one boy who's a half deer, and it is very rare to be half deer. His brother, who is Will Forte, awesome job acting, beautiful performances all around. It is based on a DC comic series who's created, written and drawn by Jeff Lemire. Phenomenal artist, very great storyteller. Once again, such a beautiful show. It is awesome. The references to being like a combination of like the Adventures of Huck Finn and Peter Pan. It's a post-apocalyptic future, and it's not like Mad Max or dirty like Dune. It is like just cinematically beautiful. Like the landscapes in New Zealand are shot very well. And please take some time and watch Sweet Tooth. It's about a boy named Gus and his love of maple syrup, and because of that, he gets labeled a Sweet Tooth. He's candy, whatever, and he just is searching for his mom, who might be a deer and might be a human. Who knows? But please watch it, because I love it and I hardcore suggest it. But yeah, that's it. I was on Netflix. What people liked yesterday. So thank you very much.
That was the Netflix Metrix.
Yay!
So Sweet Tooth, is it animated or is it a
no, it's live action?
Oh, it's
live action. Yeah, very interesting. Such an original concept, and it was so cool to see how much time and money they put into this thing. Check it out. At least watch episode 1. You'll be hooked, I promise.
So Robert Downey Jr. made this?
Him and his wife produced it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. The last animal thing they did was Dr. Dolittle. Not as good.
Do not watch it. That is a stink fest.
That's it. What should I do? I'm the biggest actor in the world, coming off Iron Man and the Marvel series. Let's make Dr. Dolittle.
Let me put on a fake British accent and pull bagpipes out of a dragon's butt. That movie is so bad.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of not bad, we're going to talk about the follow-up to Arrested Development, Ozark.
Yeah. Right on. Now, can I assume we've all seen Ozark, right? Has everybody seen it?
I've only seen the first episode.
So
I've not seen it.
Really? I'm shocked that 2 of the 5 of us haven't seen it.
Wait, who? I'm sorry, interrupt you, Ron. Who hasn't seen Ozark yet?
Sounds like Jeff and Howard.
You two. Of all people, I'm shocked at this. Go ahead, Ron.
Well,
I can explain why.
Go ahead.
I watched the first episode, and it was pretty hardcore, and I just wasn't. I loved it. It wasn't that I didn't like it, but it's like it's sometimes when when you watch something and the time you watch it, you know, like if I watch something before I go, like my wife and I watch TV before we go to bed. It didn't seem like the kind of show I wanted to watch, and then shut my eyes and go to bed. You know what I mean? It seems like you need time after that show.
I think you're right, Jeff.
So that's why I never watched first season of American Horror Story. It was so scary.
Okay.
I watched one episode. It scared the living shit out of me, and I couldn't watch it anymore.
Would it surprise you to know that I did not watch Breaking Bad until the pandemic started?
Oh my goodness.
I'm shocked at that too.
I am shocked at that.
You know what? With certain series, I hate jumping in once all the buzz. Like I can't stand it when everybody's seen it, and like I'm like, okay, someday I'll get to it. I don't want to just jump
let's
in.
Face
late.
it, Howard. There were no superheroes or fast cars. So you know.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Jeff, yet again,
It's
a man act.
That's the
it's a really good show. I mean,
so
if you haven't seen it,
the reason I want to talk about Ozark, first off, we've never done it before, and that actually surprised me, having gone now, what are we, 26, 27 episodes now?
27 episodes.
27 episodes, which is amazing, by the way. So the fact that we haven't brought up Ozark is surprising to me, because it is one of the most watched shows on Netflix, right? I wanted to talk about it because they have signed for their 4th and final episode, which has been announced as 14 episodes to be divided into 2 seasons. Basically, they're doing the whole kind of Game of Thrones final season is really 2-season thing, and they haven't announced a date yet for when we can watch it, but production has already begun, so that's exciting. And so with that kind of in the news, and Jason Bateman just absolutely crushing it with this series on Netflix, I thought it's worth talking about it. And Jeff, I totally agree with what you just said. That first episode, if you can't get on board with the first episode, like if it's not your vibe, then you probably shouldn't watch this show, because I would describe this show as nothing short of exhausting. It is an exhausting show. Every episode you feel spent. You feel like you have no more emotional charge to give these characters, and there's no possible way they're going to survive into the next episode based on the way the landscape was laid out. I will say this, and I've talked about this before, Jason Sudeikis and Jason Bateman, they're my 2 favorite comedy actors in American, cinema and film, TV. And so the idea of seeing Jason Bateman in such a powerful, dramatic show just goes to show you his range, and I think his talent, and the fact that he's executive producer and has kind of thought up the entire storyline, the arc, and I think how it's going to finish is really just a tribute to how just absolutely amazing he is. One of the things I definitely want to talk about with that first episode, I consider, this is my opinion, this is only for me, but I consider the pilot episode of Ozark the absolute best pilot episode for any show I can possibly remember. I happen to think that Isai Morales, as the character Del, gives one of the most powerful performances in season 1 of Ozark, and is particularly frightening in the pilot episode.
Yes.
Absolutely menacing. And I will tell you, and this is not giving away anything and not hopefully wrecking anything, but he doesn't stick around for the rest of the series. And I think that was the one big mistake that Jason Bateman made in the show, is his character did not continue on to some of the greater stories, further into the series, because for me, he was worth the price of Netflix and that series, as far as I was concerned.
Well, they kind of brought, I don't want to say they brought him back, but there's another guy that steps up and takes his place, who is not quite as menacing.
That's right.
Horrifying, but maybe he realized his mistake.
There is Isai Morales, and for those of you who don't know Isai Morales, he got his fame in the movie La Bamba as the brother to Lou Diamond Phillips, and he's been in just countless other shows as the side plot Mexican, which is a terrible. Actually, he's Puerto Rican, but and he talks a lot about that in interviews, that he's reached the day and age, here in the 2010s, that he can, Latinos and Latinas have really arrived today, and that's something he garners a lot of pride about.
Yeah.
But I will just say, the idea that he could be so menacing and so charging was really what kind of got me excited about this show. I hadn't really given much to how powerful some of the other characters are. Laura Linney, I think, does an amazing job as Jason Bateman's wife on the show. The kids, who I've never heard of before, are fantastic. I think there's a number of side characters that kind of pepper this show that I think are very memorable, very exciting every time they come on. But again, for me, Isai Morales, there's a certain elegance to him in season 1 and 2 that it's kind of like, do you guys remember Raul Julia?
Yeah.
This is what I think he's kind of emerged into that genre. There's an elegance about him, but also just an absolute terror to the way he can portray that. So enough about Isai Morales. This is it. What's interesting also about Ozark is that this show did not kick off well. It did not have immediate role right from the start. In fact, Rotten Tomatoes kind of killed it the first season, and that built into a steady build into a 90 plus. I don't know how big you guys are on Rotten Tomatoes, but Rotten Tomatoes is, in my mind, kind of the barometer, and it really built into a steady following, and is now considered to be one of the prime watch shows on Netflix. So, I just want to bring this up because I'm super excited about season 4 coming up. I think this is a really great show that has kind of found its stride. I think Jason Bateman did a great job, as I already said. And I, for one, wanted to bring it up so we could talk about it and get excited about what's to come, I believe, in 2022 for the conclusion of Ozark. So that's my review for Ozark.
Good review.
Yeah.
Like,
Jason Bateman, like directing the first 2 episodes of season 1, and then the final 2 episodes also, did such a great job of setting the tone and making that deep, ominous, thrill throughout. And yeah, it's a beautiful show that is, exhausting is such a cool way of putting it, because you can only watch like 1 to 2 at a time. You're like, all right, I got to put on something else, like something lighter. But,
Go back and rewatch Ted Lasso just as a
yeah.
Well,
it's interesting. Jerry just mentioned he described it as Breaking Bad, and I think that's how it's described. If you like Breaking Bad, it's the same kind of genre. Breaking Bad to me is exactly how you just said, which is emotionally spent. There's an episode of Breaking Bad where they're trying to get rid of the body in the bathtub, and then it goes through the floor, right? And I remember seeing it, having the TV on. That show came on again. That episode came on again, and I had to turn it not because it's not like one of the greatest episodes. But I just emotionally couldn't deal with it again. And that's how I felt like a lot of Breaking Bad was. It was definitely a roller coaster of emotion. And so maybe now that I'm thinking back, the timing of that with watching that first episode of Ozark, which was pretty gosh dang intense, putting them in the drum, and so thinking to myself, maybe I'm just not ready to get into a show that like that again. You know what I mean? So it's been years though. So I mean, maybe it is
hard. I forgot to mention one final thing, that the actress Julia Garner, who plays the character Ruth Langmore on Ozark, is one of the most talented actresses I've seen in a long time, and I think she does an absolutely stellar job in this role as Ruth Langmore. So just wanted to throw that out.
One of the greatest taglines ever. I don't know shit about fuck.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. Well, thank you, Ron.
Hey, can we get an update? Is Noah's face clean now? Has he wiped off the food?
Come on, Noah, you're better than that.
Goofball. What a goofball, Noah.
All right. Well, for those of you who guessed Bob would not be here, and by this point, he is still here. So we'll continue going. And Bob is actually going to, in his triumphant return to the show, it's been a while, is going to discuss The Kings, which I'm intrigued just by the poster itself.
All right. Well, The Kings, I got to do a little backstory here. This is an adaptation of a book written by a guy named George Kimball back in 2008. And and people who watch the show know that I'm a huge boxing fan. And this is coming out at such a perfect time, because the subjects of this documentary are four of the best boxers in history, certainly the ones that took up most of the glamour spots and the attention in the 1980s. Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, and Marvin Hagler. And they were dubbed the Four Kings by Kimball. And this series is coming out at the same. In fact, the first episode was the night of the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight, which was a farce and which
exhibition.
Dancing with the Stars is what it was called.
It might as well have been called that. It was such a waste of time. To me, it's an abomination, but people find it entertaining. But so it's such a perfect time for this to come out, because just by it existing in the same time frame, it shows what a farce all this has become. Now, back in the 80s, if you were a fight fan, you remember that Muhammad Ali had been retired. He had lost his last fight terribly to a guy named Trevor Berbick. And there was this vacuum of stardom. There wasn't anybody to carry that belt, that mantle that he had carried for so long. So what happened was it all began in the welterweight ranks with Sugar Ray Leonard coming around after the 76 Olympics and being the golden boy. And he had his first fight with Roberto Duran. And Duran beat him up, roughed him up, welcomed him to the world of cutthroat boxing. And then that sort of set in motion a lot of things. Number one was the rematch, which took place in New Orleans, the infamous No Mas, where Roberto, to my great chagrin, turned his back and said, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm done with this, because Sugar Ray was clowning on him and embarrassing him. And that was not the way Roberto fought. It wasn't that he felt he was getting beaten. He just didn't want to fight that way. And he said, I'm done. So that's a whole other story. That's a whole other movie. But what happened then was that, and this series brings this out, is that at the same time Leonard was becoming this huge star, Tommy Hearns was bubbling up in Detroit and just knocking people senseless one after the other. He was sort of a freak of a welterweight, 6'2", 147 pounds. He had legs the size of toothpicks, but his torso, he looked like a friggin' dragon. And he just laid waste to everybody they put in front of him. And so eventually these two were going to fight, and they did. Now, the story of the Kings is not any individual fight. It's the fact that there were 9 fights between Roberto Duran, Leonard, Tommy Hearns, and Hagler. Each of them fought each other at least once, with varying results. So all of them dramatic fights, except you could say that the Duran-Leonard 3 fight, there was no drama on that. That sucked. But all the other fights leading up to that, you never knew where it was going to go. Sugar Ray took the title from Marvin Hagler, a bona fide middleweight, just rat-a-tat-tatted him and embarrassed him. Tommy Hearns went on to avenge his loss to Leonard in '89 in what I thought was a clear win. He knocked him down twice, but they gave him they called the fight a draw.
A horrendous decision.
Yeah,
just carried the fight.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody who knew anything about boxing at that time knew that it was a joke. But anyway, in between that, you had Hearns and Hagler, where people call that the greatest 3 rounds in boxing history. Now, I'm going to say that even though I love the sport, I don't agree with that. I'm going to say it's the greatest first round in boxing history. After that, Marvin had touched up Tommy, and it looked like about halfway through the second, it was only a matter of time before it was over. Hearns' legs were gone. So Hagler wound up winning, and then later wound up losing to Leonard. But they had this round robin thing going, where like in 1984, after Duran had redeemed himself from the No Mas debacle and beat up and took the belt from a young kid named Davey Moore, a middleweight, but nobody gave him a shot in that fight. Duran was washed up. Everybody hated him. He wins a title, and a legitimate title. So then they paired him with Hearns, and Hearns just destroyed him in 2 rounds. The most vicious knockout I think I've ever seen. There's never been one before, or people can disagree with Matt, but just YouTube, Hearns Duran, and he just brutalizes Roberto, just destroys him. Now, to Roberto's credit, he went on to fight 15 more years after that, and was competitive in a lot of fights. But anyway, the whole idea of that was that these four boxers saved boxing at a time where they needed stars, they needed marquee names and people that were going to carry Muhammad Ali's mantle. And interestingly enough, what happened was they did this throughout the 80s, and it was long about 1989 where they all stopped fighting each other. Well, Tyson was in full swing then, and he carried the mantle on into the 90s a little bit, and then they lost it early 90s. But anyway, it's a fascinating story about, and what they do is they against all the fights that are going on, they have the political backdrop, the Jimmy Carter, the Reagan years. It's just sort of, to me, it's just a fascinating look at a sport that picked itself up. And these four guys, in my view, there's never been more talent, more dedication to the sport. And I just love it.
That's fascinating, Bob. I definitely want to watch it. It's funny because and Howard knows I'm not a sports guy, but I was totally aware of thank you. I was totally aware of Hearns and Leonard and all that kind of stuff. It reminded me too, I need to watch The Last Dance.
Yeah.
Very good.
So.
Yeah, I watched it as well. Speaking of the Kings, and what I liked about it was the footage. Obviously, the footage of the fights, but they showed interviews. The footage of the interviews. They revamped the color on it, and it just made it just unbelievable. I mean, there was a shot with I think it was Muhammad Ali's last fight.
Yeah,
and they revamped the color on it. It was just really, really cool to see that footage of those arenas that those guys fought in and stuff. It was just really cool. Very, very well done. Very well done documentary.
It was prize fighting back then. It really wasn't, it was about the event. I was a huge boxing guy, was raised that way too, Sal and Bob. And it was, that era of boxing was incredible. You had some other fighters that were really good in that era that didn't get to do because of the personality of those guys was so big. You had a guy like John the Beast Mugabe, who was excellent. He had his fight with Hagler was one of the most brutal all the way around fights that I can remember ever seeing in my life. But it's just, those guys were so big. It's also really relevant, obviously, with Hagler's passing, over the last month as well. But I didn't even see that this has come out. I'll check it out. There are some incredible boxing documentaries that are not just good if you're a boxing fan, but, my wife watched with me HBO documentary, Legendary Nights, the tale of Arturo Gatti and Irish Mickey Ward and their Great fights, and just a superb story. And then the other boxing documentary that came out over the last couple of years was the Muhammad Ali documentary. I think it was HBO, as told through his appearances on the Dick Cavett show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
excellent.
So
and so weird the way those two guys connected. It's almost like his relationship with Howard Cosell. Just really unique storytelling.
Well, I really liked in the '80s when Roddy Piper took on Mr. Perfect or whoever it was.
Sure.
The Ultimate Warrior.
That was before he was doing Slim Jims or something. Anyway, all right, let's talk about
that was Macho Man.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about Halston. I think Zach's touched on this in the top 10 once, but but Sal, who loves shows about people that were real.
I do, and this one was kind of accidental. It popped up on Netflix, probably because I watch biography documentaries, so it popped up, and I'm like,
not because you watch this show.
Yeah, of course, and this show too. Obviously, this show too.
Not because of Zach.
But anyway, it is about fashion designer Halston, who I knew nothing about, so it was kind of good for me to watch this as well. It's very interesting. I want to talk to Ron and Howard about some of the marketing stuff that was in this documentary that those two guys would know about what the careers that they're in. But anyway, it's about a fashion designer. It takes place earlier in his life in the late 60s. I didn't know this. He was born in Iowa. He lived in Indiana. He went to school in Chicago. I didn't know anything about this guy. If you would have told me just the way he acted, Ewan McGregor plays him in this movie, in this documentary, and or in this movie and series. It's a 5-part series on Netflix, and he does a very good job. But the way he plays him, you would never think he was. The girl that plays Liza Minnelli, Krista Rodriguez, she does a really good job as Liza Minnelli in this. And she even says to him, like in like the earlier episodes, you seem like, why are you talking like that? You seem like you're French or something. You're from Iowa. You lived in Indiana. So that was kind of funny when you said that to him. So I'm like, yeah, why is he talking like that? But if you like show, obviously just aside of his career and what he accomplished, just if you just like movies or shows about 1960s attire, I mean, it's just amazingly done. The cinematography, the wardrobe, obviously the wardrobe, because a lot of it is his. But that's really well done. I thought it was very well done. Obviously, like every movie you see in the 60s, I don't know why he smokes in every single scene, which I think was overly done. I know people smoked back then, but I don't know if they smoked like all the time, like literally 24/7. That's what he does in this. So I thought that was kind of annoying, but very good episodes. Just 5 quick episodes, very easy watch. I like the first episode because it's kind of like he's building his career. He's basically he's just a fashion designer, and all of a sudden how he became what he became is he liked making hats for his mother. So he develops hats early on in his career, and Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy wears one on Inauguration Day with her husband, and obviously the floodgates open up with orders, and he kind of becomes known as the fashion designer of hats. And then he moves on to women's clothing. He moves on to perfumes. And he's got this manager that basically he needed money. So he sold his name. He sold his brand to this guy for $7 million. And and when you do that, and that's why I want to talk to Ron and Howard, because you work for an owner that took his brand and went public and stuff, where I worked for somebody that didn't do that. He never went public. I used to work for Arizona Beverages, and they never went public. He never wanted to owe money to mortgages and stuff like that. So he bought everything cash, everything he did for his brand. Where Halston, he had to sell out. So he sold his name, but he became very wealthy because of it, but he was in control. And later on, that actually went to hurt him, although he became one of the biggest fashion designers and labels, marketing brands in the world. He lost control of it. And that's one of the things that kind of was like a little bit of his downfall. As a matter of fact, he died in 1990 of AIDS. He was a gay man, and he was very in that Studio 54 kind of era. And that was one of the things it said that he regretted, was that he died, not owning the rights of his name, not owning his brand. But he became one of the, obviously biggest fashion designers. He was the first one to put suede on coats for women, and it just exploded in the early 70s, 1974. Anyway, like I said, it's a 5-episode series. I thought it was really good. I thought it was well done.
I'll have to check that out, Sally. I didn't know anything about it. I know Halston, the brand just dominated fragrances like for decades, right? And I think that was a big part of of somebody's empire. I guess it wasn't his empire because it wasn't his name, but that's terrible. I'd never heard that story that his name wasn't owned by him.
No, exactly. And there was a really good scene. I'm trying to think of who the guy that played his manager, or the guy that he sold the rights to. He was a marketing guru. Anyway, he says something very interesting to him. It's probably in the early 70s, and he had just put the hat on Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy, and so he's trying to hang out with like famous people and put something on him, whether it's a sweater or a coat. Sure. And he's going nuts. And this guy says to him, he goes, You're missing the point. And he's like, what are you talking about? I got to find a celebrity. He's like, if you do things right and sign this deal with JCPenney, you will be the star. And that's what he was trying to tell him, is you're going to become the star, not who you're putting the clothes on. And that's what he did. He became the star.
Yeah.
And, obviously his downfall was just the way he lived. He was he loved to do cocaine, and he was very eccentric. And
well, who doesn't really, Sal?
but
Are we talking about Halston or Bob?
very, very well done. I thought it was a really good little watch, 5-episode series on Netflix. So check it out.
Nice.
By the way, it just dawned on me that the two of them on that camera look like Statler and Waldorf.
Don't we? I know, it's horrible. Well, next week we're going to be apart again. I have a new computer.
All right.
All right. Well, that was good. So I watched the first episode. I have to get back in because Shannon Wilson, who I know plays Bill Pullman's wife, is in it. So I have to get into it. But let's wrap things up.
Yeah.
With 1971, that music changed everything.
Yeah. So this is an 8-part Apple TV docuseries. In addition to fast cars and comic book movies. Thank you, Ron. I love music documentaries as well, but this really is so much more than a music documentary. It's a superb historical documentary as well. So 1971. So first, let me just talk about the series and what's unique about just the production of this docuseries. For a music documentary, it focuses so little. There's no talking heads that they're interviewing now about it. It's got a bunch of footage, historical footage, and behind the scenes camera shots that nobody has seen before. It's all unique. And I'm talking stuff like John Lennon in the studio, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger in the south of France. It's just absolutely unique. They weave that with the music from the time frame, and it's really so well produced. But why 71 was so unique and what this story tells throughout this is it was absolutely a divergent point in history, in the U.S. history. And they really focus on the U.S. and the U.K. predominantly. It was coming out of the 60s, and it was so much was changing. So they focus on that you were getting just a bunch of things. First of all, the race, the African-American movements like the Black Panthers were becoming more prevalent. It was becoming a much stronger presence. Angela Davis. So that was a significant issue. You were getting much stronger women's rights pushes. You were getting a much stronger homosexual rights push. You were getting coming out of sort of the free love era to a much more awakened and heightened concern about things like the Vietnam War in a much more serious manner. Nixon as president, you were getting a much stronger take from folks being concerned about economic policy. And all of these things were absolutely reflected in the music in 1971. So from a homosexual rights standpoint, you had Elton John, who just launched in America and was really one of the first truly out musicians to hit it big. You had an African-American major push with artists like Sly and the Family Stone. You had a more coming out of the kind of like more rough and folksy period. You had artists that were a little bit more artistic and synthesized, like Bowie. And then most important, and then from a women's rights, you had strong female musicians that were honest female musicians. They weren't trying to be, there were stronger women in, especially Carole King and Joni Mitchell. All of the music was in 1971. Elton John has a line in this documentary where he says, at any given time in any week of 1971, you could go down, buy 10 albums at the record store any week. And of those 10 albums, 6 or 7 to this day would be considered absolute classic albums. Carole King, Tapestry, one of the best albums of all time. Yeah. Rolling Stones, Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Street. Elton John, Tumbleweed Connection. Just unbelievable music that came out. And it, what they talk about in this is a lot of other eras, especially the 60s, the music was reflective of the era. In 1971, the music defined the era. It was the opposite. It became rallying calls for all these political points. And drugs is another one. It was coming out of the pot smoking era of the 60s into really heavy drugs. There are a couple of archived pieces in this that are absolutely astonishing to see. There is Dick Cavett show. Sly Stone on the Dick Cavett show. They talk about how high he was because he was out of control at this point in time. He was so high in this interview.
How high was he?
It's unbelievable. And Dick Cavett is like joking because it's out of control how high he was on live television. And I'm not talking a little bit pot smoking high. I'm talking like seriously coked or heroin up. So it's one of the best. There's we've talked many times that a lot of these series repeat themselves. There's a couple of points that repeat from series to series, but every episode has a kind of a different theme. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's absolutely riveting. And again, you're not just watching a music documentary, you're watching a fantastic portrait of a time in our history, as was defined in the music. And then what's cool is they play the songs and then kind of spin this record. So the music that they're using to narrate, then they spin this little record graphic. So you're like, oh crap, I didn't even know that song was from that year, and it's all in 71. It's really good. I highly recommend it and go out.
Do they talk about, hey Howard, do they talk about the Beatles at all?
They do. They talk about the end of the Beatles. And then there's actually some great footage of like George Harrison, his first meal visiting John and Yoko after the breakup, when their first chance getting back together, and John talking about it, John talking a little bit about the breakup, and
was that in 71 when they broke up?
It was a couple years earlier, I think, but 71 was kind of when John was doing his first solo stuff and trying to do some of that stuff. It's really amazing. Just all these musicians were had just things that were relative. Carole King had just gotten divorced and had really been treated poorly by her singer, songwriter, co-author of all their earlier music. She had always written with him, but she had never performed. And it was James Taylor that convinced her to go to the Troubadour and open for him. And just Tapestry. I mean, Tapestry is still to this day one of the best pieces of music ever put on wax. Wax is what, for our younger viewers, is what music used to be put on. It wasn't just on the internet. But I mean, Elton John just exploding on the American scene. I've talked about one of my all-time favorite documentaries, Laurel Canyon. The Laurel Canyon scene in the 70s was, Joni Mitchell, Linda Ronstadt, CSN, Jackson Browne. it was all going on, and again, it was music. The music became rallying cries. I'm forgetting his name, but the revolution will not be televised, which is quoted a lot. I'm forgetting his name, but he also wrote a song on that album called "No Knock," which they play the song and they show the lyrics, and I had never heard that song. It's unbelievably relevant right now. And it was, 71 that song came out. I'm like, holy shit, 50 years. That song's lyrics is still absolutely relevant today. So yeah, it's great. I recommend it. Great music, great storytelling, and really cool behind the scenes stuff. Oh, like the
great summation, Howard. I thought I'd like to point out although that you are absolutely correct, in 1971, the gravitas, the weightiness that was going on in the music scene. The counterpoint to that, number 7 in the top 10, Donny Osmond, "Go Away, Little Girl."
They talk about that.
Context, people.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of one of the episodes that they interview the Osmonds and Donnie, and they talk about that was the balance to a lot of it. Was there needed to be an all-white Mormon, no nothing controversial act for a lot of white America needed that, and that's where their popularity came from at that time. Was they were the counterbalance for white America. Nothing, and that, so that that's funny. I totally forgot that was a big part of it, but yeah, it was great.
Just showing that white America has no taste.
Exactly.
Thank you, Lee. Another great. Thank you, Jerry, for tuning in once again. Great job, everybody. I got a lot of shows I got to watch. That's one of the reasons I love doing the show. So I think we're at the end. We're at the end. Ron, say goodnight.
Yeah, good night, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Howard, say goodnight.
Good night, everybody.
Sal and Bob, say goodnight. Plug your show.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Listen to Sal and Bob.
Sal and Bob show.
Lipson.
See you guys.
Zach, pick 2 of your shows so we don't have
create your own pod venture at Silicon Angels. Listen to those and I'll be very happy. Thank you.
Okay.
Zach is a engineer. So thank you guys. I'm Jeff DeWaskin, host of Live from Detroit, the Jeff DeWaskin Show. And please check us out, all the podcasts out. Ron and Howard got started on my podcast with a couple episodes called Crossing the Streams. It's where it all began, folks. It's where it's all began. Thank you all once again. And just join us every Wednesday. Follow us on YouTube. If you're not there, just search The Jeff DeWaskin Show. And we'll see you next Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, every Wednesday.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Crossing the Streams, brought to you by scenesnobs.com and part of the Jeff DeWaskin Show. Your hosts, of course, Jeff DeWaskin, Sal D'Amelio, Bob Phillips, Ron Lippett, and Howard Rosner. Follow us all on the socials, and we'll see you next week and every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Mark your calendars. We're going live and crossing more streams.